Line them up, folks. Every single person who boarded that plane to Seattle is a suspect in what might have been one of the worst performances the Miami Dolphins have had in a long time. We're talking a 24-3 loss to the Seahawks, but honestly, the score doesn't even reflect how bad it really was. It was a disaster. Embarrassing. Quarterback Skylar Thompson got the start for Tua Tagovailoa, and let's be real here, he might have seen his last snap as a Dolphin after that mess. It was rough, as if the offense had never practiced before. 11 penalties. Yeah, 11. I've watched a lot of football, and trust me, I've never seen the Dolphins this undisciplined. Here's the thing, Tua's absence may be covering up a lot more than we thought. I mean, how much of the Dolphins' vulnerabilities has he been masking all this time? With him out, everything seemed to fall apart, and it wasn't just a little slip-up. No, this was a collapse. The gap between Tua and his backups is so wide it feels like they didn't even bother trying to compete. It's almost as if the team walked into that game thinking, well, we've already lost, let's just get this over with. Now, let's give a little credit to the defense. They were the best part of this whole mess, but even they had their issues. Early on, they gave up some big plays, and before we knew it, the Dolphins were in a hole. But hey, they forced 2 turnovers and only allowed 7 points after the initial 17. Not a terrible effort, but it's not like they could dig the offense out of the pit they'd thrown themselves into. But let's talk about the real problem here, the quarterback situation. And don't get confused by the phrase on fire here, because this QB room is burning, and not in a good way. It's a dumpster fire. Tua's out with his 3rd documented concussion. Skylar Thompson? He somehow beat out Mike White in training camp, but then looked like a guy who belonged on the practice squad, not an NFL field. He was lost out there, and I mean lost. He couldn't get plays off on time, couldn't read the defense, couldn't even manage the clock. It was like watching someone who's never played the game before. Then there's Tim Boyle and Snoop Huntley. They're here, but they don't know the playbook well enough to contribute yet. And honestly, after Sunday, it didn't seem like Skylar knew it either. McDaniel was literally sprinting down the sideline, ready to call timeouts because his quarterback was struggling that much to get things moving. It was clear Thompson wasn't up to the task. He didn't use his legs, didn't get into a rhythm, and when you compare him to a guy like Tim Boyle, who's only been with the team for a few weeks, it's ridiculous how much worse he looked. 3 years in the system, and that's what you give us? Miami's quarterback room is one of the worst in the league when Tua's not playing, and that's just not acceptable. Not when you know your starter has an injury history like Tua's. Chris Grier, the GM, has to take the blame for this one. You have to get a quality backup, and we don't have that. This team is way too top-heavy. There's no depth, and that's a huge problem when you want to be a Super Bowl contender. Look at the best teams in the league. They can plug in backups and still win games. The Dolphins? As soon as Tua's out, the whole operation falls apart. When you look at other teams, like the Cowboys with Cooper Rush or the Bengals with Jake Browning, you see backups keeping the team afloat. But the Dolphins? Nope. It's like they're completely dependent on Tua to win, and that's not sustainable. And don't even get me started on the lack of capable backups over the years. Teddy Bridgewater? He was supposed to be the guy a few years ago, but he didn't win any games either. At some point, you have to admit your mistakes and fix the problem. The Dolphins gambled on Skylar and lost. Badly. So who do we blame? Skylar Thompson is definitely one suspect. He couldn't command the offense and looked completely out of his depth. Mike McDaniel, the head coach, didn't help either. His play calling was baffling at times. He gave up on the run when it was the only thing working, and he continues to trust Jason Sanders, who misses a crucial kick almost every game.